What if the greatest enemy never came with a sword? What if the real fight wasn't against a giant of flesh, but against the terror that silences the soul, paralyzes your steps, and dries up hope? How many times, faced with the unknown, have you felt your body tremble, even knowing, deep down, that the battle was yours? You look around and see strong men giving up, prepared people, frozen, wise individuals, silent, not because they lack knowledge, but because they lack inner courage. Fear doesn't shout, it whispers. It whispers that you're not capable, that you're too small, that you don't belong there. But there's a kind of strength that isn't measured by the size of a sword or the volume of a voice. It's the strength of those who dare to stand. Even when the ground seems to swallow their steps, in times of noise and haste, there's a lesson hidden in the silence of those who face the impossible with steady feet and a calm heart. It's not about winning, it's about enduring, about resisting, without losing yourself, about facing fear, without needing to shout. The real victory is mastery over yourself. It's the moment you feel fear, and still, you move forward. Stay until the end of this video, because today, you'll discover that David's greatest battle wasn't against Goliath, it was against something far more common and far more dangerous. The fear that lives inside all of us today will uncover the Stoic message behind the battle with Goliath. It was early in the valley of Elah. The mist still hung over the grass when the silence of the hills was cut by a voice that didn't just challenge, it humiliated. Goliath wasn't just a soldier, he was the embodiment of scorn. Tall as a living fortress, he wore a bronze breastplate that gleamed like a threat, and his gaze struck more fear than any blade ever could. For 40 days, he stepped out at dawn, planted his feet in the middle of the valley, and shouted a simple, cruel challenge to the army of Israel: choose a man, let him come. If he defeats me, we will be your servants. It was as if he was certain no one would come, and he was right. No soldier crossed the line. Fear was an invisible wall between the men of Israel and the valley where Goliath roared. Those who held spears did not hold courage. Those who wore armor carried, beneath it, the nakedness of doubt. Then David appeared, not as a hero, not as a warrior, but as a messenger, an obedient boy bringing bread and cheese to his brothers. He didn't come with the weight of duty. He came with the lightness of surrender. Unlike those who carry no need to prove anything to anyone, he observed with clear eyes. He heard Goliath's shout. He saw the silent reaction of the men. He felt the weight of a fear that wasn't his. And then he asked, without arrogance, "Why does no one go?" His words fell like a stone into still water. The reactions were immediate. His brothers mocked him, accused him of vanity, of seeking attention. Saul received him with doubt, perhaps seeing in him more naivety than resolve. But David didn't argue. He simply spoke with the calm of one who had already faced other lions, not of flesh, but of doubt. He said he would go, and he did not hesitate. David didn't ask for a sword. He refused Saul's armor, too heavy, made for another kind of battle, external, visible, loud. He chose what he knew: a staff, a pouch, 5 smooth stones. It wasn't the strength of his arm he carried, but the clarity of one who knows the real battlefield isn't the ground beneath your feet, but the ground you stand on within. He walked down the valley without fanfare. No crowd cheered him. No trumpets sounded, just the sound of his steps on the dry earth, the faint crunch of grass underfoot, and the whisper of a silence that screamed louder than Goliath. On the other side, the giant laughed. He mocked the slender figure coming with sticks and stones. His laughter was loud, but it didn't pierce David's calm, because the enemy's mockery only wounds where there is doubt. And in that moment, David carried none, not about the outcome, but about his stance before the challenge. His courage wasn't the certainty of victory, it was the serenity of one who had already decided not to run. Goliath shouted, ridiculed, called him a dog, insulted his youth, and hurled curses. But the boy answered with a steady voice, not because he had power, but because he no longer had fear. And at the right moment, he drew a stone, a simple motion, a trained arm, a firm heart, and he launched it. The stone cut through the air as if carrying the weight of all the silent battles David had already won. And when it struck Goliath's forehead, it wasn't just flesh that fell. It was the symbol of collective fear crumbling before individual courage. The sound of the giant's fall echoed through the hills. The soldiers who had been silent now shouted. Those who had trembled now charged. But the real victory had already happened before the stone flew. It was born when David crossed the field with steady steps, when he chose not to fight with the strength of others, but with his own conviction, when he decided that the battle, even if impossible, was no greater than the integrity of who he was. That is the hidden beauty of the story. It's not about a boy killing a giant. It's about an unshaken spirit facing the terror that paralyzes. It's about the choice not to be infected by the fear of others. David defeated Goliath, yes, but before that, he defeated his brothers, scorn, the king's skepticism, the enemy's mockery, and above all, the inner voice that whispers, "You are not enough." David ignored that voice, and that made him greater than any giant. He didn't need to prove his strength. He simply held his ground, and when the stone flew, it carried with it the whole philosophy of someone who already understood, perhaps without words, but with his soul, that true mastery is always over oneself. This story, with all its symbolism, offers us far more than a tale of victory. It offers us a mirror, because each of us, at some point, is called to the valley. And there, we are not expected to be the strongest, only to be true to our essence, to keep focus, to take a deep breath, and to move forward, even in fear. Even when small, because sometimes a single stone thrown with truth can topple what the whole world thought invincible. And in the end, what remains isn't the giant's body lying on the ground. It's the inner silence of one who refused to be ruled by fear. The same silence Seneca would call wisdom. The same Marcus Aurelius sought in his meditations. The peace found only by those who choose to act, instead of to fear. David's battle against Goliath isn't just a story of physical courage. Above all, it's a faithful portrait of what the ancient Stoics called self-mastery. David's true strength wasn't in his arm or the speed of his sling, it was in the internal stability that kept him from being swept away by the collective fear. He didn't win because he was stronger. He won because he refused to be ruled by the fear of others. While an entire army saw an insurmountable giant, David saw an opportunity to remain whole, centered, present. He understood, even if intuitively, what Epictetus would later teach. It's not things that disturb us, but our judgments about them. Goliath was enormous, but what made him terrifying to the soldiers wasn't his size, it was the meaning they gave him. It was fear turned into prophecy. David rejected that view. He refused to be swayed by the atmosphere of terror hanging over the camp. He kept his vision clear, his mind clear, and so he saw, not a monster, but a challenge, an obstacle, something external that could only defeat him if it first conquered his inner peace. And at DIDN, single quotes D. This is the difference between the loud hero and the serene sage. Seneca put it plainly, bravery isn't the absence of fear, but the mastery of it. David was afraid. It's impossible to stand before a real threat and not feel the weight of human vulnerability. But his bravery wasn't blind, it wasn't impulsive, it was mature, quiet, the steady courage of one who chooses deliberate action, even when everything around him screams despair. The resolve of one who knows that surrendering to panic means giving up control over what can be controlled. And what can we control? Marcus Aurelius answers with the simplicity of an emperor-philosopher who faced wars both external and internal. Every day, you have power over your mind, not over external events. Realize this, and you will find strength. David embodied this truth. He didn't try to control the battlefield. He didn't try to predict the enemy's movements or influence the fear of others. He turned inward, and he controlled what was within his reach, his thoughts, his focus, his calm. This is the essence of Stoicism, acting wisely within what depends on you, and accepting with serenity what does not. David knew he couldn't change his brothers' scorn, King Saul's disbelief, or Goliath's mockery, but he could choose not to let them poison him. He could choose to stay his course, to move forward with lightness, steady but not rigid, courageous but not reckless, prepared but not burdened. True greatness, in the Stoic view, isn't about winning external battles, it's about maintaining peace while they rage. That's the virtue of endurance, not of pride, but of maturity. David, with his sling and stones, teaches us something no armor can offer. When the mind is at peace, even giants lose their power. And you, have you ever stopped to ask yourself, what is your Goliath? Maybe it doesn't wear bronze armor. Maybe it doesn't carry a spear, but it's there, present, silently challenging you every day. It might be unemployment, knocking relentlessly at your door. eroding your self-worth, whispering that you're not enough, that you're unnecessary. It might be a betrayal that shattered your soul, not just in words spoken, but in silent abandonment, in the breaking of a trust that once seemed unshakable. Maybe your Goliath is invisible, a constant feeling of inadequacy, the sense that no matter how hard you try, you'll never measure up, not to others, not even to yourself. Sometimes the giant has no face. It appears in the fear of starting over after too many falls, in the loneliness stretching through long nights where all you wanted was a presence, a gesture, someone to say, "I see you," but no one does, and it hurts. A quiet kind of hurt that only those who've waited too long in vain can understand. And yet, you keep going, with small stones, with a faith that's worn thin but still holds, with hesitant but steady steps, with the urge to quit, and the choice to continue, is the silence that unsettles you. Actually, your time of preparation is this valley you're in, this dry, lonely ground, the place where you're being forged, not to destroy an external enemy, but to face something far deeper within. Who hurt you, and why do you still carry it like a burden you can't put down? How many times have you held back tears just to avoid seeming weak? How many times have you swallowed your truth for fear of displeasing others? Are you living in your own invisible prison because you still believe you need others' approval to act? Are you still waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect support, the perfect sign to rise? David didn't wait. He didn't ask for permission. He didn't need anyone's validation. He just looked fear in the eye and said, "I will go." Don't wait for others to acknowledge your burden. They won't always see the weight you carry, the lions you faced alone, the nights you cried silently and still got up for another day. But you've seen yourself, you've endured, and this is enough. Because in the end, true victory isn't when the world applauds, it's when you can look in the mirror and say, "I was true to myself." And for those who seek wisdom, that is the ultimate triumph. The wise man does not choose the easiest path. He honors the one given to him. David didn't ask to be king. He didn't seek battles, didn't crave a stage, didn't hunger for glory. He was just a boy with a steady heart and a clear mind. But when the battle came, he didn't back down, not because he thought himself invincible, but because he knew who he was. And that was enough. His strength didn't come from force, it came from silence, the inner silence of one who learned to master himself before trying to change the world, of one who knows that courage isn't the absence of fear, but the presence of purpose. That is true power, not the kind that imposes, but the kind that endures, not what shouts, but what remains. Self-mastery, clarity, alignment between what you feel and what you do. And if this story has stirred something deep within you, if it's awakened a memory, a pain, or a longing to rise more whole, consider joining this channel. Here, every story is a silent compass for the soul, not to tell you what to do, but to remind you of what you already know and may have forgotten along the way. Because sometimes what defeats you isn't what's outside, it's what you haven't yet dared to face within. But here's the good news: you can, and you're not alone.